I'm of the mindset that everyone should know a little bit about cars. I've always been mechanically inclined too, and I think that may have actually saved me. I was using dating apps a few years ago. Met this guy, he seemed super nice. We talked for a few weeks before I was willing to meet with him. His dad owned a local gun store where I would go to get my target stuff. I used to be in a women's league for competition shooting, so I had seen this guy around and had a decent impression of him but wanted to be safe. He invited me to a concert at a local town site. It was a concert that I really wanted to go to as well, and I figured that it would be safe since it was at a well-known place with a lot of security and all that. I let him pick me up because he had talked about mechanics and cars, and he wanted to show me his Mustang. He bragged about how well he kept it running and how he babied it and all that. I was into time trial racing at that time, so I was interested to see what he had done. So he picks me up and we start heading to the event. Right before the exit, he says that his car is acting funny though. I was watching the dash, and if you've been in racing, then you know that our cars and trucks usually have extra accessories and all that. Whether it's aftermarket racks and gauges or switches, there's usually something aftermarket inside the car. There was nothing extra. The car felt like it was shifting correctly. There was no shudder or noise, nothing to indicate any problems. I was like, that's weird, and all I said was we should try and limp it to the concert venue. It's less than a mile away, and it's better than being stuck on the I-15. He agrees and drives us very carefully the last mile. We get to the concert and things were okayish, I guess. He kept watching me and buying me drinks. I refused to drink though, so every time he gave me one I would make up an excuse and go to the bathroom and flush it. He kept making comments about how well I was handling my alcohol. I was super uncomfortable. The concert ends though, and it's time to leave. For context, this concert happened at the local reservation town site, and at the time the res did not have great cell service, so I couldn't get a hold of anyone to come and get me. So I decided to bite the bullet, and I talked him into taking the old highway instead of the 15. It sounds silly, I know, but when you take the old highway, even though it's slower, people are more willing to stop and help you than they are on the freeway. I figured that if he was having car troubles, it would be safer, and we wouldn't have people flying by us at like 80 miles per hour. So, we make it halfway between the town site and our town, and he says the car is acting funny again and pulls over. I'm stone cold sober and didn't notice anything wrong, so when I get out of the car, I go to check it out with him. He starts making comments though about how I'm drunk and I should wait in the car and that it'd be safer because you can't trust drunk Indians, especially with a little girl like you. This dude had no idea that I was actually native. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up, so I checked my phone though, and I just barely have service and start texting my dad. As I'm walking away from the engine compartment, I noticed that he was watching me, so I started acting like I was trying to get cell service to get help. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched this man take the spark plug wires off the distributor cap and switch the order. Your spark plug wires connect to the distributor cap based on the order of your cylinders firing, and so doing that will either make the car run terrible or not even turn on. I managed to send my dad a picture of what he was doing, and my dad tells me to start walking. As I go to walk away, this guy gets back in the car and opens his glove box, which exposes a pistol that he had. He tells me not to worry and that we'll be safe. I probably broke a world record for how fast I was texting my dad. He starts telling me to just walk and tell the guy that he's on his way and that our friends live up the road. So I do. I start walking with a purpose and take off as quickly as I can. The guy is yelling after me and I yell back, "The wind is too loud and I can't hear you. I'll be back with our friends." I'm scared out of my mind. We're 10 miles out of town with no one around. The closest road actually led to a cemetery, so there's really no one here to help me. And I get a really bad feeling the farther that I get from the car. So I turn around and look, and the hood is closed. The lights are on. So I decide to hide in the farm irrigation next to the road. I keep walking towards town and text my dad what's happening all this time. I hear a car slowly coming up behind me and see a flashlight, so I press against the side of the ditch and wait for it to pass. Once I can't hear it anymore, I crawl out and just kind of keep walking along the weeds. My dad texts me that he sees me, so when he pulls up, I run to the truck. As we make it towards the town, we actually pass the dude, and he's got like 3 cop cars around him. My dad tells me not to worry about what happened, and I heard through the grapevine later on that he had been charged with violent crimes in the past and that he'd been arrested that night for concealed carrying without a permit. The police never talked to me, but I haven't seen that guy in town ever since then. Which brings me back to why I think everyone should know at least a little bit about cars. If I didn't have experience with cars that day and didn't know what he was doing, I could have been dead in that ditch instead of hiding. Most communities have something where you can take basic car care and maintenance courses, and I highly recommend everyone takes them and at least knows the basics. This dude knew that I knew cars, but his whole goal was to get me to get drunk and then I wouldn't realize what was happening. It was a frightening experience, and these days I'm a lot more cautious. So we just moved into this apartment a week and a half ago. My son will be 6 months old tomorrow, and he's got his own room. We live on the 2nd floor of a 2-story building. We only share our stairs with one other apartment, and there are 2 underneath the 2 of ours, so it is like we have 4 apartments in our little nook, I guess you could say. When you walk up the stairs, the 2nd bedroom of both apartments has a window that you have to walk by to get to our front doors. Not my favorite, but I always make sure it's locked, and the only people walking by should be the person who lives across from us, since they're the only ones with reason to come up the stairs. The way the room is laid out too is when you walk in, you come into a corner. On the wall, coming off the right of the door, there are 2 more. It's his closet and bathroom. I have his crib in between those 2 doors, his changing table dresser, and all that are in his closet. If you stand by his crib and flip 180, you'll see the wall with the window, and from left to right on that wall I have this rocking chair, a cart with a lamp, books, pictures, all those things that we need for when rocking and whatnot. Then I have a little shatterproof mirror for him on the wall by the floor. Then it's his little play corner with bookshelves and toy shelves, and going around the corner is more shelves and his ball pit. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, on the windowsill I had this baby monitor. We have one of those video monitors that we were gifted for his baby shower, and I like this one because it can't connect to phones or outside technology, only to the device's own screen or control panel that stays in our room. Something you should know too is that we were blessed with a baby who has slept through the night since he was 3 months old. About 4 or 5 nights ago, my son woke up though at exactly midnight screaming and crying, "Mama." He's just had his first word about 2 weeks now, and he uses it like crazy. But I rushed in and shushed him and rocked him back to sleep. When I got back to our bed, I didn't even look at the monitor, I just sort of crashed. In the morning, I went to look at it, and when I woke up, it was facing outside. Like the whole camera unit had somehow turned itself around. It does have a pan back and forth feature, but this was not that. I mean, the whole thing had been shifted around. I rushed in and checked, and everything else was as it should be. My son was fast asleep. I asked my husband if he had moved it, and he looked confused and said that he slept all night. The thing is that I instantly ran in there when I heard him crying and didn't even glance at the monitor, so I don't know if it happened before or after I went in there to check on him. Anyway, fast forward a few days and nothing else is out of the ordinary. Then tonight I see weird stuff on the monitor. I'd say it almost looks like smoke swaying back and forth in front of it. My husband saw it too, so we both went into his room, but there was nothing. So we decided that it was either a bug, a mist from his humidifier, or maybe just a trick of the light or something. Now it's 1 a.m. My son wakes up from a dead sleep screaming again. I say, "I'll go," and I roll out of bed. I shush my son back to sleep and go to set him down, and as I do, I hear 4 consecutive knocks, either on or outside the window, just booms. I don't know how to describe it other than it sounded like someone was knocking on a door, quite loud too. I rush over and pull back the blinds, and absolutely no one is outside. The window is locked and there's nothing there. But I know what I heard. It was clear as day. I waited a few more minutes and came back to bed after checking all the windows and the doors, but I can't help but think that maybe there's something here. Unless there is a logical explanation, I'm very open to that too, but in fact, that's my favorite choice for what's going on here. But does anyone have any advice or insight? Also, I'll say this at the risk of losing some people here, but I'm very sensitive to the paranormal, and I've not had bad or any weird vibes or anything in the house, except for the 2 nights that he woke up screaming. But that could also be mum anxiety, right? Anyway, if you have any idea as to what to do about all this, then please do help me. To start this off, I'd like to say that I don't live in a creepy house. It's old, I admit, but in the charming sort of way. It doesn't feel negative when you walk in. It feels like home, really. Always just home. So you can imagine my absolute shock when I was laying in bed alone this morning watching something watch me back. 4 a.m. this morning, my husband left our bed to go to the bathroom. Our room is decent sized, but from where the bed sits, you can sort of see one of the 2 windows in the room, the other one being covered by blinds and the TV. It being 4 a.m. in the summer, it's a bit light to where you can see outlines and curtains and things. We have no animals, by the way. So I laid in bed waiting for him to return so that we could cuddle when I blinked and suddenly saw movement in the dark. A dark mass in the shape of a head had moved over the top of the covers just enough to where I could make out the fact that it was moving. I froze because I thought that it was my husband at first. Sometimes when he gets up, he'll sit in the chair and put on the headphones and play video games to not wake me up when he can't go to sleep. And I thought that maybe he had just got back in and I just didn't hear the door open, and that's why he was sitting in the dark looking at me like that. So I asked him, "Why are you sitting on the floor?" A few seconds with my heart pounding, no answer, and then I heard the doorknob click, and as soon as my husband walked in, it ducked down and it just disappeared. I screamed, obviously, because, what the heck, right? And had him do a thorough search, but he didn't find any intruder. I still can't explain it, and I'm scared to go into my bedroom alone now. I experienced a lot of stuff, especially as a kid. I've been told that I had an aunt that had passed away in another life that was trying to look out for me, but I've never ever seen what I witnessed this morning. It did not make me feel safe at all. This happened a few years back, and though I've experienced other strange phenomena since, this in particular has always stuck in my brain. So I worked as a server at what was portrayed to be a high-class evening restaurant where a reservation was required. The restaurant was inside a pre-Civil War era stone house and located right in the center of a well-known haunted town with a lot of history. It was around 4:50 p.m., 10 minutes before opening. I was the only one on the schedule that night besides for the chef. The dining room had large street-facing windows that had been sealed shut for years with no other opening to the outside. Everything was set up for the night, and all I had left to do was lighting the 15 or so candles that decorated the mantel and the tables. The candles had no trouble sparking up and had steady, consistent flames. Before exiting from the dining room, I took a last remaining glimpse to ensure perfection and was very happy with my work. I then left for the kitchen to quickly check in with the chef before opening. I made my way back to the dining room after no more than maybe a minute, and when I say that I was absolutely gobstruck, I'm not kidding, because every single candle had been blown out. And there was still smoke lingering from all 15 candles as well. And my mind just cannot come up with an explanation, a logical one anyway, for this. There was no possible entrance in the dining room besides the front door, which had been firmly locked. The chef and I were the only 2 people there, and he wouldn't have been able to leave the kitchen without me noticing, since there's only one pathway between the 2 rooms. There were no fans or open doors, and as stated before, all the windows were sealed shut. I remember the air feeling abnormally still as well, and getting an overwhelming sense of discomfort and dread upon re-entrance, as if I was being, watched. Up until this day, I still haven't been able to find any solid reasoning behind the occurrence and truly believe that something strange made itself known that night.